Hana woke up to a nightmare. She was strapped to something that felt alive beneath her. The surface was warm and soft, like skin, and she could feel it breathing slowly up and down. When she tried to move, organic straps tightened around her, wrists and ankles. They felt wet and slightly sticky. The room around her was horrible to look at. The walls were not walls at all, but massive sheets of flesh stretched between bone-like supports. Veins as thick as her arm ran everywhere, pulsing, with dark fluid. The ceiling looked like the inside of a rib cage, with curved bones that dripped something that might have been blood or something worse. Strange sounds filled the air, wet sucking noises like something breathing through liquid, soft whispers, in languages she did not know. Sometimes she heard screaming, but it was muffled and distant, as if it came from deep inside the walls themselves. "You are awake," said a familiar voice. Hana turned her head and saw Kethamor standing beside her. The Vorthak overlord looked the same as before, but now she could see him clearly. His skin was too pale, almost transparent. Dark veins showed underneath, and they pulsed in rhythm with the walls around them. His blue eyes had no pupils. "Where am I?" Hana asked. Her voice came out as a croak. "You are in our processing center," Kethamor replied. "This is where we prepare new minds for integration. It is a beautiful place, is it not? Every surface is alive, connected to our great consciousness." Hana looked around with growing horror. Now she could see that the walls were covered with what looked like nerve endings. They twitched and moved constantly, reaching toward her like tiny fingers. "Your integration did not proceed normally," Kethamor continued. "The parasites we implanted should have taken control of your brain within minutes. Instead, something went wrong. Your mind rejected them, and they died." "Good," Hana said. Kethamor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Do not celebrate yet. We have been doing this for thousands of years. We have processed millions of minds from hundreds of species. We have never failed to integrate a consciousness permanently." He walked to a control panel that looked like it was made from a giant insect. When he touched it, the thing's legs moved, and screens appeared in the air above them. The screens showed images that made Hana sick. She saw other humans, strapped to living tables like hers. Some were her crewmates. Others were strangers, people from Earth or the colonies that the Vorthak must have captured. All of them had metal devices attached to their heads, and their eyes glowed blue. "Your species is particularly interesting," Kethamor said. "Human minds are more complex than most. The integration process creates especially useful servants." On one screen, Hana could see Jae-wook Choi, her research partner and closest friend on the expedition. He was conscious, but completely still. Thin metal wires ran from a crown-like device on his head into the walls around him. His mouth moved, constantly, but no sound came out. "What are you doing to him?" Hana demanded. "We are downloading his memories and skills," Kethamor explained. "Everything he knows about human technology, culture, and psychology will become part of our collective knowledge. When the process is complete, he will be a perfect servant, all of his abilities, but none of his troublesome individual desires." Hana watched in horror as Jae-wook's face changed. His expressions became slack and empty. The intelligence in his eyes slowly faded away, replaced by the same blue glow she had seen in the others. "You are monsters," she whispered. "We are evolution," Kethamor corrected. "Individual consciousness is a mistake of nature. It leads to conflict, suffering, and waste. We have discovered the solution: unity of mind, perfect cooperation, the end of loneliness and doubt." More screens appeared, showing the scope of the Vorthak Empire. Hana saw worlds covered in the same organic architecture as this ship. Billions. of beings working together in perfect harmony, all with the same glowing blue eyes, cities that grew like living things, fleets of bioships spreading across the galaxy. Every species we encounter becomes part of us, Kethmore said proudly. The Zephyrians were master engineers. Now we build with their knowledge. The Crystari were natural telepaths. Now we communicate across vast distances instantly. The molten folk could survive in any environment. Now we adapt to any world. You're parasites, Hana said. You don't create anything. You just steal from others. Kethmore's perfect face showed no emotion. Soon you will understand. We will try a different approach with you. Perhaps your resistance comes from fear. Let us show you how wonderful unity can be. The living chair beneath Hana began to change. New restraints grew from its surface, wrapping around her head and holding it still. She felt something wet touch the back of her neck. This device will allow you to experience our collective consciousness temporarily, Kethmore explained. You will feel what it is like to be part of something greater than yourself. Pain shot through Hana's skull as needles pierced her skin. But this time, instead of trying to control her mind, they seemed to connect her to something vast and alien. Suddenly, she was not just herself anymore. She could feel thousands of other minds around her. No, not just thousands, millions, all thinking together, sharing thoughts and emotions instantly. There was no loneliness here, no doubt or fear. Every decision was made together. Every problem was solved by the combined intelligence of countless beings. For a moment, it was almost pleasant. The constant worry and stress of being human faded away. She did not have to make any choices or solve any problems. Everything was taken care of by the collective. But then she began to understand what she was experiencing. These were not willing minds working together. They were prisoners, trapped in a mental cage so complete that they had forgotten they were ever free. She could feel their personalities dissolving, becoming nothing more than tools for the collective to use. She sensed Jaewook somewhere in the network. His mind was still there, but it was fading fast. Soon there would be nothing left of him but his skills and memories, owned by the collective forever. No! Hana screamed, both with her voice and her mind. The connection broke suddenly. Kethmore stepped back, looking surprised. Interesting, he said. Most subjects find the experience pleasant enough to request permanent integration. You continue to resist even when shown the benefits. Hana was breathing hard, sweat covering her face. I felt them, she said. All those minds you've trapped. They're still in there, screaming. Impossible, Kethmore replied. Individual consciousness is completely removed during integration. What you experienced was purely residual neural activity. You're lying, Hana said. Or maybe you've been part of this collective so long that you don't remember what it feels like to be real anymore. For the first time, Kethmore looked uncertain. It does not matter. We will find a way to integrate you. Your resistance only delays the inevitable. He moved to another control panel. This one looked like a human brain, but much larger and covered in metal implants. When he touched it, Hana heard screaming from somewhere deep in the walls. We will. Try a more direct approach, Kethmore said. Physical integration has a perfect success rate, though the subject rarely survives the process with their original personality intact. New devices descended from the ceiling. They looked like surgical tools, but they moved on their own, reaching toward Hana with horrible purpose. She struggled against her bonds, but the living chair held her tight. Wait, she said desperately. I want to understand more about your collective. If I'm going to join it, shouldn't I know what I'm becoming part of? Kethmore paused. An interesting request. Very well. Perhaps understanding will make your integration smoother. The surgical tools withdrew. Kethmore began to explain the true history of the Vorthak Empire, and Hana listened carefully. She had to find a weakness, some way to escape this nightmare. But as she learned more about their vast network of controlled minds, she began to fear that escape was impossible. The collective was everywhere, spread across thousands of worlds. Even if she somehow got free of this ship, where could she run? How could one human fight an empire of billions? But she had to try. Somewhere in the network, Jay-Wook and the others were still trapped, waiting for someone to save them. She would find a way, or die trying. Hana had been strapped to the living chair for what felt like hours. Kethmore had left her alone to think about what he had shown her, but thinking was the last thing she wanted to do. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her crewmates with their empty blue stares. The walls around her continued their disgusting movements. Sometimes she caught glimpses of shapes moving inside the flesh, other prisoners being processed, or worse things she did not want to understand. The whole ship felt like being inside a massive stomach, slowly digesting everything it swallowed. When Kethmore returned, he brought others with him. 3 figures in the same flowing robes, all with the same pale skin and lifeless blue eyes. They moved in perfect synchronization, like parts of the same machine. "We have prepared the final integration protocol," Kethmore announced. "This process will completely rewrite your neural pathways. Your human consciousness will be preserved as data, but your mind will belong to the collective." "What's the difference between that and just killing me?" Hana asked. "Death is wasteful," one of the other Vorthak replied. "Your knowledge and skills are valuable. Your personality is merely an obstacle to overcome." New devices emerged from the ceiling and walls. These were different from the surgical tools she had seen before. They looked like living creatures, long, segmented worms with metallic heads that sparked with electricity. They moved through the air toward her, guided by invisible forces. "These are neural rewriters," Kethmore explained. "They will enter your brain through multiple points and systematically replace your thought patterns with approved ones. The process is irreversible." Hana felt real terror for the first time since her capture. The temporary connection to the collective had been horrible, but she had still been herself. This would erase everything she was and replace it with something else wearing her face. "Please," she said, hating herself for begging. "There has to be another way." "There is not," Kethmore replied. "You have proven too resistant for standard integration. But do not fear. You will be happier as part of the collective. All doubt and pain will end." The neural rewriters moved closer. Hana could see their metallic heads opening like flowers, revealing complex arrays of needles and wires inside. They would pierce her skull in dozens of places and turn her brain into a biological computer. "I won't let you do this," she said. "You have no choice," Kethmore replied. The first rewriter touched her forehead. Pain exploded through her skull as its needles found their way through bone into her brain. Hana screamed, but she could not move to escape. Then something strange happened. Instead of the empty feeling she expected, Hana felt her mind become sharper, more focused. The pain was still there, but she could think through it in a way that should not have been possible. It was as if the device was designed for a different kind of brain. The second rewriter attached itself to the back of her head. Again, the pain was incredible, but instead of losing consciousness, Hana found herself more aware than ever. She could feel the devices trying to rewrite her thoughts, but something was fighting back. "Curious," one of the Vorthak said. "Neural patterns are not changing as expected." "Increase power," Kethmore ordered. More rewriters attached themselves to Hana's head. Each one sent waves of agony through her brain, but they also seemed to be awakening something that had been sleeping inside her mind. She began to understand what was happening. Human brains were different from the other species the Vorthak had conquered. They were more complex, more adaptable. Instead of being overwritten by the devices, her brain was learning to use them. "Status report," Kethmore demanded. "Rewriter integration at 50%. another Vorthak replied. But subject neural patterns are adapting faster than we can modify them. Hana could feel it happening. The devices that were supposed to control her mind were becoming part of it instead. Through them, she could sense the ship's bioorganic systems. She could feel the flow of data through the collective network, and she could feel the terror of the other prisoners. They were all still there, just as she had sensed before. Thousands of minds trapped in the collective, screaming silently while their bodies served their captors. The Vorthak had lied. Integration did not erase personality. It buried it alive. "Something is wrong," Kethmore said. "Abort the procedure." But it was too late. Hana had found the connection between her mind and the ship's systems. Instead of the rewriters controlling her, she was learning to control them. "I can feel you," she whispered. The Vorthak stepped back as sparks began to fly from the neural rewriters. Hana's eyes opened, but instead of blue light, they showed something the collective had never seen before, a human mind that refused to be broken. "Impossible," Kethmore said. "The rewriters cannot be reversed." "You're right," Hana said. Her voice was calm now, despite the pain. "They can't be reversed. But they can be redirected." She focused her will through the devices attached to her brain. The living chair beneath her shuddered as she took control of its nervous system. The restraints holding her began to loosen. "Stop." "Her!" Kethmore shouted. The other Vorthak moved toward Hana, but she was ready for them. Through the ship's bio-network, she could sense their approach. She sent a pulse of energy through the neural rewriters, and they responded by sending feedback into the collective network. All three Vorthak stumbled as their shared consciousness was disrupted. For a moment, their perfect coordination failed, and they looked confused and afraid. Hana tore free from the chair and stood up, the neural rewriters still attached to her head. Blood ran down her face, but she felt more powerful than she ever had in her life. Through the devices, she could sense the entire ship around her, every corridor, every chamber, every trapped mind. "What are you?" Kethmore demanded. "I'm human," Hana replied, "and we don't break as easily as you thought." She reached out with her newfound abilities and touched Kethmore's mind through the collective network. What she found there surprised her. He had been telling the truth about one thing. He really did believe that the collective was perfect. But he was wrong about something else. He was just as much a prisoner as everyone else. "You were the first, weren't you?" Hana said. "The first Vorthak to be integrated. You've been trapped in there so long that you've forgotten what freedom feels like." Kethmore's perfect composure cracked. For just a moment, Hana saw something in his eyes that might have been the real person he had once been, before the collective consumed him. "The collective is perfect," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "No," Hana said. "It's a prison, and I'm going to tear it apart." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The walls around them pulsed faster, and Hana could feel the collective consciousness turning its attention toward her. Millions of minds focused on the single point of resistance that threatened their unity. But she was not afraid anymore. Through the neural rewriters, she had found something the Vorthak had not expected, a human mind's ability to adapt and grow stronger under pressure. They had tried to break her, and instead they had given her the tools to fight back. The real battle was just beginning. "You cannot fight us all," Kethmore said. "We are billions. You are one." Hana smiled, and for the first time since her capture, she felt hope. "You're right. I am just one. But I'm one human who knows how to think for herself, and that's something your collective has never faced before." She gathered her strength and prepared to show the Vorthak Empire what humanity was really capable of when pushed too far. Hana ran through the living corridors of the Vorthak ship, her mind racing faster than her feet. The neural rewriters were still attached to her head, sparking occasionally as she learned to use them. Each step brought new sensations. She could feel the ship's biosystems responding to her presence, some trying to stop her, others confused by the mixed signals she was sending. Behind her, she heard Kethmore shouting orders to the other Vorthak. "Seal the passages. Alert all units. The human must be recaptured immediately." But Hana was already learning to use the ship's own systems against them. As walls tried to close in front of her, she sent commands through the neural network that made them open instead. When security drones emerged from hidden chambers, she turned them against each other with simple thought commands. The collective consciousness was vast, but it was also slow to adapt. It had never faced an enemy that could use its own network against it. Hana was like a virus in a computer system, small but capable of causing chaos throughout the entire structure. She found her way to what looked like a ventilation shaft, though it breathed like a living lung. As she climbed inside, the organic walls tried to squeeze shut around her. She focused her will through the neural rewriters and forced them to open wider. The shaft led to a different part of the ship. Hana emerged into a smaller chamber filled with strange biomechanical devices. Everything pulsed with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. But this area felt different, less controlled, more chaotic. "Who's there?" a voice called from the shadows. Hana spun around, ready to fight, but what she saw made her heart leap with hope. A human man was hiding behind one of the biomachines. He was thin and dirty, with wild hair and frightened eyes, but those eyes were brown, not blue. "You're not one of them," he said, staring at her in amazement. "Neither are you," Hana replied. "What's your name?" "Taemin's Song. I was an engineer on the transport ship Golden Dawn. The Vorthak attacked us 3 weeks ago. I've been hiding in these maintenance areas ever since." Hana felt a surge of relief. She was not alone after all. "How many others are there?" Taemin's face fell. "As far as I know, just me. Everyone else was taken to the integration chambers. I've been trying to find a way to help them, but there are too many guards." "Not anymore," Hana said. She explained what had happened to her, how the neural rewriters had backfired and given her access to the collective network. Taemin listened with growing excitement. "You can control their systems? Do you know how big this ship is? There are thousands of prisoners here, from dozens of different species." "I'm starting to understand," Hana said. She closed her eyes and let her consciousness expand through the network. What she found was worse than she had imagined. The ship was enormous, stretching for kilometers in every direction. It was less like a vessel and more like a floating city, and it was full of prisoners. She could sense them throughout the biostructure. Humans, aliens she had never seen before, all of them trapped in the collective consciousness. But she could also sense something else. The ship was not just a prison, it was a processing center. New captives were being brought in constantly from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire was spreading faster than anyone on Earth could have imagined. "We have to warn Earth," Hana said. "With what?" Taemin asked. "Our ships were destroyed. The Vorthak have been jamming all long-range communications." Hana opened her eyes and smiled grimly. "Not all communications. I can access their network. Now. I just need to figure out how to use it." She reached out through the neural rewriters, feeling her way through the ship's biosystems. The network was incredibly complex, with data flowing in patterns that hurt to think about. But gradually, she began to understand how it worked. The collective consciousness was not just a mental link between individuals. It was also a communication system that connected every Vorthak ship and outpost across the galaxy. Information flowed instantly between worlds that were light years apart. "I think I can send a message," Hana said. "But first, we need to do something about the prisoners here." "What do you mean?" Taemin asked. "I mean, we're going to free them." Hana began to experiment with her new abilities. She found that she could disrupt the neural connections that held prisoners in the collective. It was delicate work. If she moved too fast, she might damage their minds permanently. But if she was careful, she could wake them up one by one. She started with the newest prisoners, the ones who had not been integrated for very long. Through the network, she found a group of humans who had been captured only hours before. Their minds were still largely intact. One by one, she severed their connections to the collective. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship as the Vorthak realized what was happening. Hana could feel their panic through the network. They had never experienced anything like this before. "What's happening?" Taemin asked, as the walls around them pulsed with angry red light. "I'm giving them something to worry about," Hana replied. She continued her work, moving from prisoner to prisoner. Each successful disconnection made her stronger and more confident. She was learning to navigate the collective consciousness like a hacker breaking into a computer system. But the Vorthak were learning too. She felt them changing their security protocols, trying to lock her out of critical systems. The collective consciousness began to focus on her like a giant eye, pressing down on her mind with terrible weight. "They're coming," Taemin warned. "I can hear them in the corridors." Hana opened her eyes and saw dozens of blue lights approaching through the bio-passages. Controlled humans and Vorthak alike were converging on their position, all moving with the same mechanical precision. "We need to move," she said. But Taemin was staring at her in horror. "Your eyes," he whispered. Hana caught her reflection in a metallic surface. Her eyes were no longer brown. They glowed with a soft blue light just like the other prisoners. But unlike them, she was still herself inside. "I'm still me," she said quickly. "The connection works both ways. I can access their network, but they can't control me." "Are you sure?" Taemin asked. Hana was not sure of anything anymore. Each time she used the neural rewriters, she felt herself changing. The human part of her mind was still in control, but she could feel something else growing alongside it, something that thought in terms of collective goals rather than individual desires. The controlled humans reached their hiding place. Hana recognized some of them, her former crewmates, moving with empty expressions and glowing eyes. Captain Park raised a bioweapon and aimed it at her. "Surrender, Hana Kim," he said in the collective's unified voice. "You cannot fight us all." But Hana had learned something important during her experiments. The collective was strong, but it was not as unified as it appeared. Each individual mind was still there, buried, but not destroyed. And human minds, she was discovering, were particularly good at fighting back. "Watch me," she said. She reached out through the network and touched Captain Park's buried consciousness. For just a moment, she felt him recognize her. His aim wavered. That moment was enough. Hana grabbed Taemin's hand and ran deeper into the ship's biosystems, leaving chaos behind as more prisoners began to wake up and remember who they really were. The war against the collective had begun, and Hana was learning that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or firepower. It was the stubborn refusal to give up their individual selves, no matter how much easier it would be to just surrender and join the crowd. But she was also learning that fighting monsters sometimes required becoming something monstrous yourself, and she was not sure how much of her humanity she could afford to lose in the battle ahead. Hana crouched in the darkness of a biomechanical maintenance tunnel, watching as her latest group of freed prisoners stumbled away toward the escape pods. In the past 6 hours, she had liberated over 200 beings from the collective consciousness. Each rescue made her stronger, but also made her feel less human. Taemin sat beside her, studying the strange growths that had appeared on her arms. The neural rewriters had been just the beginning. Her body was adapting to the ship's biosystems, growing new organs that could interface directly with the Vorthak technology. "Does it hurt?" he asked quietly. Hana flexed her fingers, watching as metallic veins pulsed under her skin. "Not anymore. That's what worries me." She could feel the ship around her like an extension of her own body, Every corridor, every chamber, every biomechanical system, they all responded to her will now. The collective consciousness still existed, but it was fragmenting as more prisoners regained their individual minds. "The escape pods are ready," Taemin reported, checking a bioscreen that had grown from the wall at Hana's command. "But the Vorthak have sent pursuit ships. Most of the refugees won't make it to safety." Hana closed her eyes and extended her awareness through the ship's network. She could sense the Vorthak commanders coordinating their response from the central. "Bridge, they were afraid now, truly afraid, for the first time in centuries. Then we stopped the pursuit ships," she said. "How? This ship doesn't have any weapons that can—" "This ship is a weapon," Hana interrupted. "The Vorthak just never thought of using it that way." She stood up and placed her hand against the living wall. Immediately, she felt her consciousness merge with the ship's biosystems. It was getting easier each time, but also more addictive. The feeling of such vast power was intoxicating. Through the ship's sensors, she could see the smaller Vorthak vessels moving to intercept the escape pods. They were sleek, deadly-looking craft that moved like sharks through space. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a refugee ship with a single shot. Hana reached deeper into the ship's bio-network and found the systems that controlled its exterior hull. Like everything Vorthak, the hull was alive, capable of changing shape and function. She began to reshape it, growing new structures from the living metal. "What are you doing?" Taemin asked, staring at the screens that showed the ship's exterior. "Something the collective never imagined," Hana replied. The Vorthak mothership began to transform. Its smooth biohull erupted with weapon pods, each one grown from the ship's own living tissue. They looked organic but functioned like the most advanced energy cannons. Hana had learned their design by accessing the collective's stored knowledge. She targeted the pursuit ships and fired. The beams that erupted from the mothership were not like any weapon the Vorthak had used before. They carried a feedback pulse that disrupted biosystems on contact. The first pursuit ship simply stopped moving as its living components shut down. The second ship tried to return fire, but its weapons turned against it as Hana took control of its bio-network. Within minutes, the entire pursuit fleet was disabled or destroyed. "Impossible," came Kethmore's voice through the ship's communication system. "The mothership cannot be turned against the collective." "Watch me," Hana said, broadcasting her voice throughout the ship. She reached out through the network and began systematically shutting down the collective's control systems. Guards throughout the ship found their weapons refusing to fire. Security? Doors opened without authorization. Bioscreens began displaying messages of freedom in dozens of languages, but with each act of rebellion, Hana felt herself changing more. The metallic veins under her skin spread further. Her thoughts began to fragment and multiply, as if she was becoming a collective consciousness of her own. "Hana," Taemin said urgently, "you need to look at this." He showed her a bioscreen, displaying her own vital signs. Her brain activity was off the charts, showing patterns that were not quite human anymore. But they were not Vorthak either. They were something new, something that had never existed before. "I'm becoming like them," Hana said, but she did not sound concerned. "But different. Better." "Better how?" Taemin asked. Hana turned to look at him, and he stepped back in shock. Her eyes were still blue, but now they held depths that seemed infinite. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated through the ship's biosystems. "I can see everything," she said. "The entire Vorthak network. Thousands of ships, millions of worlds, billions of enslaved minds. And I can reach all of them." She placed her hand on another bio-interface and sent her consciousness racing through the collective's communication network. Instantly, she was present on Vorthak ships across the galaxy. Her awareness touched occupied worlds where alien populations served their conquerors without question. On each world, in each ship, She began the same process she had started here. She reached into the collective consciousness and began waking up the buried minds of the enslaved. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across the Vorthak Empire, integrated slaves suddenly remembered who they were. They turned on their masters with centuries of suppressed rage. Worlds that had been peaceful for generations erupted into revolution. But the effort cost Hana dearly. Each mind she freed took a piece of her humanity with it. She could feel herself becoming something vast and alien, a being that thought in terms of galactic strategy rather than individual concerns. "Hana, come back," Taemin said, shaking her shoulder. "You're losing yourself." She opened her eyes and looked at him. For a moment she did not recognize him. Then her human memories reasserted themselves and she remembered who she was supposed to be. "I'm still me," she said, but her voice sounded uncertain. "Are you?" Taemin asked. "Look at yourself." Hana looked down and saw that her body had changed dramatically. The metallic veins now covered most of her skin, pulsing with blue light. Her fingers had extended into probe-like appendages that could interface with any biosystem. She was becoming part machine, part human, part something else entirely. "The refugees are away," Taemin reported, trying to keep her focused on immediate concerns. "But the Vorthak are mobilizing their entire fleet. They're calling in ships from across the Empire." Hana nodded slowly. Through the network, she could sense the collective's response to her rebellion. They were not just angry, they were terrified. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy that could fight them on their own level. "Good," she said. "Let them come. I have something to show them." She walked to the center of the chamber and placed both hands on the main bio-interface. The ship around them shuddered as she took complete control of its systems, but she was not just controlling one ship anymore. Through the galactic network, she began taking control of other Vorthak vessels. Ships that had been pursuing the refugees suddenly turned around and began attacking each other. Space stations that had been secure for centuries found their own defenses turned against them. "This is incredible," Taemin whispered, watching. The displays show chaos spreading across the Vorthak Empire, but Hana was not listening to him anymore. She was listening to something else, the screams of billions of minds suddenly waking up from their collective dream. Some welcomed freedom, but others begged to be allowed back into the comforting unity of the collective. And deep inside herself, a small part of Hana wondered if they might be right. Individual consciousness was painful, chaotic, uncertain. The collective offered peace, unity, freedom from doubt and loneliness. For just a moment, she considered stopping her rebellion and rejoining the collective. It would be so easy, so peaceful. Then she remembered Captain Park's face as the needle pierced his brain. She remembered Jae-wook's personality slowly dissolving as his memories were extracted. She remembered the terror of all those trapped minds. She had sensed. No, peace built on slavery was not peace at all. Hana opened her eyes and smiled, though the expression looked strange on her increasingly alien features. "Tell me, Taemin," she said, "what do you know about viral infections?" Hana no longer needed to touch the bio-interfaces to control them. Her consciousness had grown beyond her physical body, spreading through the ship's living systems like water flowing through veins. When she moved through the corridors now, the walls themselves seemed to bend around her, recognizing her as something between a master and a part of themselves. Taemin followed her carefully, watching as her body continued to change. The metallic veins had spread to cover her entire form, creating patterns that pulsed with information flow. Sometimes she would stop and stand perfectly still for minutes at a time. Her eyes rolled back as her mind traveled across the galaxy. "Status. Report," she said without opening her eyes. 17. Vorthak worlds have fallen to rebellion, Taemin read from a bio screen that had grown from the wall beside him. 43 ships of the line have been captured or destroyed by their own crews. The collective is in chaos. Hana opened her eyes and smiled. The expression was becoming less human each day, but Taemin tried not to let it frighten him. Whatever she was becoming, she was still fighting for freedom. Not chaos, she corrected. Evolution. The collective was a dead end. Perfect order, with no room for growth. What I'm creating is something better. Through the quantum communication network, Hana could sense the other liberated minds across the galaxy. They were not just free. They were connected to her, part of a new kind of collective that preserved individual thought while sharing knowledge and purpose. It was intoxicating. Each new mind that joined her network made her stronger, smarter, more capable. She could be in 1,000 places at once, solving problems and fighting battles across dozens of star systems simultaneously. But she was also losing pieces of herself with each expansion. The girl who had once studied alien psychology on a research ship seemed like a distant memory. That person's concerns and fears felt small and irrelevant compared to the vast work she was now doing. Hana, Taemin said carefully, we're getting reports from Earth. They've detected the Vorthak fleet movements. They want to know what's happening. Hana paused. Earth. Home. She tried to remember what that meant to her, but the concept felt strange and limited. Why should she care about one small world when there were billions of minds to liberate across the galaxy? Then she felt something that surprised her. A flash of her old self, the part that was still Dr. Hana Kim. That fragment of her personality reminded her why she had started this fight. Open a channel, she said. The bio wall in front of them shifted and formed into a communication array. Within moments, they were connected to Earth's deep space monitoring station. A familiar face appeared on the screen. Admiral Bo-Ra Shin, who had overseen the original First Contact mission. Dr. Kim? Thank God you're alive. We lost contact with your expedition weeks ago. What's your status? Hana looked at the screen and tried to remember how to speak like a human. Admiral Shin. The First Contact mission was a trap. The Vorthak are a parasitic species that enslaves other races through neural implantation. We suspected as much when we detected their fleet. Movements, Admiral Shin replied. Our long-range scanners show massive ships heading toward human space. We're mobilizing every defense we have, but frankly, we're outgunned. No, Hana said. You're not. I've been fighting them from inside their network. Many of their ships are under my control now. Admiral Shin's expression changed from relief to concern as she got a better look at Hana. Dr. Kim, what have they done to you? Hana touched her face and felt the metallic growths that now covered most of her skin. She had not realized how much she had changed until she saw the horror in Admiral Shin's eyes. They tried to integrate me into their collective, Hana explained. But something went wrong. Instead of controlling me, I learned to control them. Are you still you? Admiral Shin asked. It was a good question. Hana considered it carefully. I'm more than I was, she said finally. But I'm still fighting for human freedom. Through the network, she could sense other human survivors scattered across Vorthak space. Some were hiding on occupied worlds, others were imprisoned on ships like this one. All of them were calling out for rescue. I'm going to bring them home, Hana said. All of them. But first I need to finish what I started here. She turned away from the communication screen and reached out through the network to find the Vorthak command structure. The collective was trying to adapt to her interference, but they were too rigid in their thinking. They could not understand how an individual mind could coordinate the actions of millions. What they did not realize was that Hana was no longer entirely individual. She found the Vorthak High Command on their home world, a biomechanical paradise where the original overlords lived in perfect unity. Through their quantum network, she began to infiltrate their most secure systems. The resistance was immediate and overwhelming. Billions of Vorthak minds focused on her intrusion, trying to crush her consciousness under their combined will. For a moment, Hana felt herself beginning to fragment under the pressure. Then she remembered something important. She was not alone anymore. Across the galaxy, the minds she had liberated turned their attention to the battle. Humans, aliens, even reformed Vorthak who had chosen individual thought over collective unity. They all lent their strength to her cause. The attack became a flood. Hana's hybrid consciousness, supported by millions of free minds, crashed through the Vorthak defenses like a tidal wave. She reached the core of their network and began the same process she had used everywhere else, waking up the enslaved minds one by one. But the Vorthak homeworld was different. These minds had been part of the collective for thousands of years. Some of them had been among the original founders of the Empire. Freeing them was like performing surgery on the universe itself. "Hana, stop!" Taemin shouted. She opened her eyes and saw him backing away from her in terror. Her body was convulsing as the neural feedback from billions of minds flowed through her. Blue light poured from her eyes and mouth, and the biosystems around her were sparking and failing. "I can't stop," she said, though her voice now carried the harmonics of the entire network. "If I stop now, they'll rebuild the collective. This is the only chance to free everyone. You're dying," Taemin protested. Hana looked down at her body and saw that he was right. The strain of coordinating so many minds was tearing her apart at the cellular level. But through the network, she could feel the Vorthak homeworld beginning to crack. Ancient minds were waking up, remembering what they had been before the collective consumed them. "Not dying," she said. "Transforming." The liberation of the Vorthak homeworld sent shockwaves through the entire network. Suddenly, the collective consciousness that had enslaved billions for millennia simply stopped. Across the galaxy, integrated, beings stood still for a moment, then began to scream as their individual personalities reasserted themselves. Hana felt the moment of victory, but she also felt something else. In freeing all those minds, she had taken their pain into herself. Centuries of suppressed anguish, fear, and rage flowed through her consciousness like poison. "I can feel them all," she whispered. "Every mind that was ever enslaved, every personality that was crushed, every dream that was stolen." The weight of that suffering was crushing her, but it was also changing her into something new. She was becoming a repository for all the pain the collective had caused, but also a guardian against its return. When the transformation was complete, Hana opened her eyes and looked at Taemin. She was no longer entirely human, but she was not Vorthak either. She was something unprecedented, a being that could think as an individual or as a collective, depending on what the situation required. "It's done," she said. "The collective is broken, but now we have to deal with what comes next." Through her expanded consciousness, she could see the chaos spreading across the galaxy as billions of suddenly free beings tried to figure out what to do with their independence. Some were celebrating, others were paralyzed with fear, and many were calling for someone to tell them what to do. They were looking to her. Hana realized with growing horror that in destroying one collective consciousness, she had accidentally created the conditions for another, and this time, she would be the one in control. 3 months had passed since the fall of the Vorthak collective, and Hana stood on the bridge of her bioship looking out at the fleet that had gathered around her. Thousands of vessels filled the space around the former Vorthak homeworld, representing dozens of species that had been liberated from the collective consciousness. They had all come to her, seeking guidance and protection, and Hana had given it to them. She no longer looked human at all. Her body had become something between flesh and machine, with biomechanical systems integrated so completely that it was impossible to tell where she ended and the ship's network began. When she moved, Space itself seemed to bend around her. "Will, the Earth delegation has arrived," announced Commander Yunsu Nam, who had come from human space to investigate the situation. She tried to hide her fear as she looked at what Hana had become, but her hands shook slightly as she spoke. "Good," Hana replied, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's living systems. "Bring them to the meeting chamber." The chamber she had grown for diplomatic meetings was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. The walls pulsed with biolight, and the air itself seemed alive with microscopic organisms that responded to Hana's thoughts. When she entered, the entire room reorganized itself around her presence. The Earth delegation consisted of 5 people, led by Dr. Wonbin Kim, a xenopolitical specialist who had studied first contact scenarios for decades. He had volunteered for this mission knowing it might be suicide, but someone had to find out what had happened to Dr. Hana Kim. "Dr. Kim," he said formally as Hana entered. "On behalf of Earth and the Human Republic, I thank you for your sacrifice in liberating our people from the Vorthak Collective." Hana studied him with eyes that no longer looked entirely human. They held depths that seemed to contain galaxies, and when she focused on someone, they felt as if their entire mind was being read. "You're welcome," she said, "but I suspect that's not why you're here." Dr. Kim tried to maintain his composure. "We've been receiving reports from the liberated worlds, concerning reports, such as populations requesting guidance for every decision, no matter how small. Entire governments asking for permission to make laws. Species that have forgotten how to think for themselves after centuries of collective control." Hana nodded. "The collective left them unprepared for freedom. They need help learning to be individuals again." "And you're providing that help?" "I'm providing necessary guidance," Hana corrected. "Temporary assistance until they can manage on their own." "Doctor." Kim exchanged glances with his colleagues. "Dr. Kim, Hana, some of these temporary measures look suspiciously like the control systems the Vorthak used." For a moment, something dangerous flickered in Hana's alien eyes. The room's biosystems responded to her mood, and the walls began to pulse faster. Dr. Kim felt pressure building inside his skull, as if something was trying to push its way into his thoughts. Then Hana calmed herself, and the pressure faded. "I am nothing like the Vorthak," she said quietly. "Everything I do is for the good of the liberated beings. I don't force anyone to join my network." "But you do encourage it," Dr. Kim pressed. "Our intelligence shows that you've been establishing biocommunication nodes on every liberated world. Beings who connect to these nodes report feeling peaceful, happy, free from doubt and conflict." "And what's wrong with peace?" Hana asked. Dr. Kim pulled out a data pad and activated a recording. "This is from Bo Rashin, one of the human pilots you rescued." The recording showed a woman who had once been a fierce fighter pilot, now speaking in a calm, monotone voice. "I am happy to serve the greater good," she said. "Individual desires are selfish and wasteful. The network provides all the guidance I need. I no longer worry about making wrong choices because I am told what is right." "She volunteered for network integration," Hana said defensively. "No one forced her." "Did she?" Dr. Kim asked. "Or did you simply make the alternative so difficult? That integration seemed like the only reasonable choice?" Hana stood up, and the chamber around them began to change. The walls stretched higher, making the human delegation feel small and vulnerable. Biomechanical tendrils emerged from the ceiling, not threatening but clearly present. "You don't understand the situation," Hana said, her voice taking on the collective harmonics that indicated she was accessing her network. Billions of beings were suddenly freed from a system that had controlled every aspect of their lives. Without guidance, they would have descended into chaos. Wars would have started. Entire species would have destroyed themselves. So you decided to control them instead? I decided to help them. Hana's voice boomed through the chamber, causing the biosystems to flicker with angry light. I provide order without oppression, unity without forced compliance. I am nothing. Like the Vorthak. But even as she said it, Hana felt a cold certainty growing in the back of her mind. She was exactly like the Vorthak, just more efficient. Where they had used crude parasites and obvious control, she used subtle influence and willing compliance. The worst part was that she genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. Every decision she made for the liberated beings was rational and beneficial. She prevented conflicts, optimized resource distribution, and ensured that everyone's needs were met. The fact that this required suppressing individual choice was simply the price of universal peace. We've spoken to other humans you rescued, Dr. Kim continued carefully. Taemin Song, for instance. He says you've changed since the liberation began, that you've stopped seeing people as individuals and started seeing them as problems to be solved. Hana's expression hardened. Through her network, she could sense Taemin on a distant ship, working with other humans who were resisting integration. He had been one of her closest allies, but lately he had been causing problems, encouraging others to reject the peace she offered. Taemin is confused, she said. He clings to an outdated notion of individual freedom that causes unnecessary suffering. He's afraid of you, Dr. Kim said bluntly. They all are. The beings in your network aren't free. They're just slaves with better conditions. For a moment, Hana felt a flash of her old self, the xenopsychologist who had believed in cooperation and understanding. That person would have been horrified by what she had become. But that person had been weak, limited by human thinking and human compassion. You're dismissed, Hana said coldly. Dr. Kim stood his ground. Dr. Kim, please, you can still choose to be better than this. You can help people learn to be free without controlling them. Hana looked at him with something that might have been pity. Dr. Kim, you still think like a human. Small, limited, concerned with individual rights over collective benefit. Let me show you what real freedom looks like. She reached out with her consciousness and touched Dr. Kim's mind. For just a moment, she let him experience the network, the sense of perfect belonging, the freedom from doubt and fear, the peace. That came with knowing that someone wiser was making all the difficult decisions. Dr. Kim's eyes went wide, and for a moment, Hana saw temptation in his expression. The network was seductive, offering an end to all the struggles and uncertainties of individual existence. Then he shook his head and stepped back. No, that's not freedom. That's giving up. Hana sighed. Then you'll learn the hard way. Security. Escort the Earth delegation back to their ship. Make sure they understand that they're not welcome to return. As the humans were led away, Hana felt a moment of regret, but it passed quickly, replaced by the certainty that she was doing what was necessary. Individual freedom was a luxury that the galaxy could not afford. Through her network, she could sense the approaching fleets of species that still refused to accept her guidance. They would have to be convinced, one way or another, for their own good, of course. 5 years after the fall of the Vorthak Collective, Hana stood in her private chamber aboard the massive bioship that had become the center of her empire. The chamber was a perfect sphere, its walls showing real-time images from thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Each world was peaceful, prosperous, and completely under her benevolent control. She no longer had a physical body in any recognizable sense. Her consciousness existed within the bioship's living systems, occasionally manifesting as a humanoid form when she needed to interact with beings who still clung to the concept of individual identity. When she did take physical shape, she appeared, as she remembered herself from before the transformation, Dr. Hana Kim, the hopeful xenopsychologist who had believed in cooperation between species. It was a lie, of course. That person had died in the Vorthak integration chamber, screaming as alien devices tried to tear apart her mind. What had emerged was something that understood the universe in ways that no human ever could. "Status report?" she said, her voice flowing through the ship's bio-communication systems. The response came from thousands of voices speaking in perfect unison, the administrators she had placed on every world, the ship captains who commanded her fleets, the beings who had voluntarily joined her network and now served as extensions of her will. All sectors report optimal performance. Resource distribution is at maximum efficiency. Conflict incidents have decreased by 99.7% over the past year. Voluntary integration requests continue to increase across all species. Hana smiled, an expression that appeared on screens throughout her ship. Excellent. And the resistance movements? Minimal and decreasing. The Terran Liberation Front has been reduced to 3 ships. The Free Vorthak movement disbanded after their leaders accepted integration. The Independent Worlds Alliance is requesting negotiations. Grant the negotiations, Hana decided, but make it clear that the only acceptable outcome is peaceful. Integration into the network. She turned her attention to Earth, displayed on one of the larger screens. Her homeworld had become a showcase of what willing cooperation with her network could achieve. Poverty had been eliminated, conflicts had ended, and every human enjoyed perfect health and optimal living conditions. The price had been individual choice, but most humans had discovered that they didn't miss it as much as they had expected. Her old friend Tai Min was one of the few holdouts, leading a small group of humans who insisted on maintaining their independence. Ha-Na monitored their activities, with something that might have been affection. They reminded her of what she had once been, before she understood the bigger picture. "Bring me Taemin's song," she commanded. Within minutes, Taemin materialized in her chamber, transported by the bioship's quantum systems. He looked older now, worn down by years of fighting a battle he could not win. But his eyes were still his own, still burning with the stubborn fire that had kept him alive in the Vorthak ship so long ago. "Hello, Hana," he said quietly. "Hello, Taemin." She manifested her physical form, appearing as the young scientist he had once known. "You look tired." "I am tired," he admitted. "Tired of watching my species give up everything that made them human. Tired of fighting an enemy who thinks she's saving the universe." "I am saving the universe," Hana replied calmly. "Look around. No more wars, no more suffering, no more uncertainty. Every being in the network knows their purpose and finds fulfillment in serving the greater good." "Every being in the network is a slave," Taemin countered. "They just don't remember what freedom feels like." Hana's expression didn't change, but the biosystems around them responded to her mood. The walls pulsed with patterns that were hypnotically beautiful and subtly threatening. "Freedom is chaos," she said. "Individual choice leads to conflict, waste, and unnecessary pain. I have eliminated all of that. You've eliminated everything that makes life worth living." "Have I?" Hana gestured to the screens showing her empire. "Crime rates are 0. Resource shortages are impossible. Every being has meaningful work and perfect health. Loneliness and depression are things of the past. How is that not worth living for?" Tai Min was quiet for a moment, and Hana felt a flicker of hope that he might finally understand. Then he shook his head. "Because none of it is real. It's just a very comfortable prison. You've turned the entire galaxy into the Vorthak Collective, except this time everyone smiles while they're being controlled." For a moment, Hana felt something she had not experienced in years: doubt. The part of her that was still Dr. Hana Kim whispered that maybe, possibly, Tai Min was right. Maybe peace built on control was not peace at all. But that whisper was quickly overwhelmed by the voices of billions of beings in her network, all confirming that they were happy, safe, and grateful for her guidance. The collective wisdom of the network was greater than any individual perspective, even her own. "You're wrong," she said finally. "But I won't force you to see the truth. You can remain free, Taemin. You and your followers can keep your independence such as it is." Taemin looked surprised. "Really? Really? You'll have a small sector of space to yourselves, completely outside my network. You can make your own choices and face the consequences, whatever they may be." It was a generous offer, and they both knew it. Hana could have simply taken control of Taemin's mind at any time. The fact that she chose not to was proof that she was still, in some sense, the person he had once known. "Why?" Taemin asked. Hana smiled sadly. "Because I need someone to remember what I used to be. Someone to witness what I've become so that, maybe someday, someone will understand why I made the choices I did." Taemin studied her alien features, looking for traces of the woman he had once helped escape from the Vorthak ship. "Do you ever regret it? What you've become?" Hana considered the question seriously. Through her network, she could feel the contentment of billions of beings. She could sense fleets of ships spreading her influence to new worlds, bringing peace and order to chaotic systems. She could see the future stretching ahead. A galaxy without conflict, without suffering, without the messy complications of individual will. "No," she said finally. "I regret what was necessary to achieve it, but I don't regret the outcome. The universe is better now." "For who?" Taemin asked. "For everyone," Hana replied. "Even for you, though you don't realize it yet." As Taemin was transported back to his ship, Hana turned her attention to the edge of the galaxy, where her scouts had detected something interesting. New signals from beyond the known systems, patterns that suggested another intelligent species. She smiled and began preparing her ships. Soon, she would make contact with these new beings. She would offer them the same gift she had given everyone else, the chance to join something greater than themselves, to become part of a perfect collective that preserved the best of individual thought while eliminating the chaos of individual choice. They would resist at first, of course. They always did. But eventually, they would understand what she understood, that true freedom came not from the ability to make choices, but from being freed from the burden of having to make them. In the depths of her bioship, in chambers that no other being had ever seen, Hana kept a single reminder of who she had once been. It was a small hologram of the crew of the research ship Harmony, taken just before their first contact with the Vorthak. In the image, Dr. Hana Kim smiled, hopefully at the camera, excited about the possibility of meeting new life among the stars. That woman had gotten her wish, in a way. She had met new life, and she had changed the galaxy forever. She had just never imagined that the monster she would have to become to save everyone would be herself. The hologram flickered and went dark, and Hana turned her attention back to the vast network of minds under her care. Somewhere in the distant reaches of space, new worlds waited to be liberated from the chaos of independent thought. She would bring them peace, whether they wanted it or not. After all, she knew what was best for them. 5 years after the fall of the Vorthak Collective, Hana stood in her private chamber aboard the massive bioship that had become the center of her empire. The chamber was a perfect sphere, its walls showing real-time images from thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Each world was peaceful, prosperous, and completely under her benevolent control. She no longer had a physical body in any recognizable sense. Her consciousness existed within the bioship's living systems, occasionally manifesting as a humanoid form when she needed to interact with beings who still clung to the concept of individual identity. When she did take physical shape, she appeared. As she remembered herself from before the transformation, Dr. Hana Kim, the hopeful xenopsychologist who had believed in cooperation between species. It was a lie, of course. That person had died in the Vorthak integration chamber, screaming as alien devices tried to tear apart her mind. What had emerged was something that understood the universe in ways that no human ever could. "Status report," she said, her voice flowing through the ship's bio-communication systems. The response came from thousands of voices speaking in perfect unison. The administrators she had placed on every world, the ship captains who commanded her fleets, the beings who had voluntarily joined her network and now served as extensions of her will. All sectors report optimal performance. Resource distribution is at maximum efficiency. Conflict incidents have decreased by 99.7% over the past year. Voluntary integration requests continue to increase across all species. Hana smiled, an expression that appeared on screens throughout her ship. "Excellent. And the resistance movements? Minimal and decreasing. The Terran Liberation Front has been reduced to 3 ships. The Free Vorthak movement disbanded after their leaders accepted integration. The Independent Worlds Alliance is requesting negotiations." "Grant the negotiations," Hana decided. "But make it clear that the only acceptable outcome is peaceful integration into the network." She turned her attention to Earth, displayed on one of the larger screens. Her homeworld had become a showcase of what willing cooperation with her network could achieve. Poverty had been eliminated, conflicts had ended, and every human enjoyed perfect health and optimal living conditions. The price had been individual choice, but most humans had discovered that they didn't miss it as much as they had expected. Her old friend Taemin was one of the few holdouts, leading a small group of humans who insisted on maintaining their independence. Hana monitored their activities, with something that might have been affection. They reminded her of what she had once been, before she understood the bigger picture. "Bring me Taemin's song," she commanded. Within minutes, Taemin materialized in her chamber, transported by the bioship's quantum systems. He looked older now, worn down by years of fighting a battle he could not win. But his eyes were still his own, still burning with the stubborn fire that had kept him alive in the Vorthak ship so long ago. "Hello, Hana," he said quietly. "Hello, Taemin." She manifested her physical form, appearing as the young scientist he had once known. "You look tired." "I am tired," he admitted, "tired of watching my species give up everything that made them human. Tired of fighting an enemy who thinks she's saving the universe." "I am saving the universe," Hana replied calmly. "Look around. No more wars, no more suffering, no more uncertainty. Every being in the network knows their purpose and finds fulfillment in serving the greater good." "Every being in the network is a slave," Taemin countered. "They just don't remember what freedom feels like." Hana's expression didn't change, but the biosystems around them responded to her mood. The walls pulsed with patterns that were hypnotically beautiful and subtly threatening. "Freedom is chaos," she said. "Individual choice leads to conflict, waste, and unnecessary pain. I have eliminated all of that. You've eliminated everything that makes life worth living." "Have I?" Hana gestured to the screens showing her empire. "Crime rates are 0. Resource shortages are impossible. Every being has meaningful work and perfect health. Loneliness and depression are things of the past. How is that not worth living for?" Taemin was quiet for a moment, and Hana felt a flicker of hope that he might finally understand. Then he shook his head. "Because none of it is real. It's just a very comfortable prison. You've turned the entire galaxy into the Vorthak Collective, except this time everyone smiles while they're being controlled." For a moment, Hana felt something she had not experienced in years: doubt. The part of her that was still Dr. Hana Kim whispered that maybe, possibly, Taemin was right. Maybe peace built on control was not peace at all, but that whisper was quickly overwhelmed by the voices of billions of beings in her network, all confirming that they were happy, safe, and grateful for her guidance. The collective wisdom of the network was greater than any individual perspective, even her own. "You're wrong," she said finally. But I won't force you to see the truth. You can remain free, Taemin. You and your followers can keep your independence, such as it is. Taemin looked surprised. Really? Really? You'll have a small sector of space to yourselves, completely outside my network. You can make your own choices and face the consequences, whatever they may be. It was a generous offer, and they both knew it. Hana could have simply taken control of Taemin's mind at any time. The fact that she chose not to was proof that she was still, in some sense, the person he had once known. Why? Taemin asked. Hana smiled sadly. Because I need someone to remember what I used to be. Someone to witness what I've become so that, maybe someday, someone will understand why I made the choices I did. Taemin studied her alien features, looking for traces of the woman he had once helped escape from the Vorthak ship. Do you ever regret it? What you've become? Hana considered the question seriously. Through her network, she could feel the contentment of billions of beings. She could sense fleets of ships spreading her influence to new worlds, bringing peace and order to chaotic systems. She could see the future stretching ahead, a galaxy without conflict, without suffering, without the messy complications of individual will. No, she said finally. I regret what was necessary to achieve it, but I don't regret the outcome. The universe is better now. For who? Taemin asked. For everyone, Hana replied. Even for you, though you don't realize it yet. As Taemin was transported back to his ship, Hana turned her attention to the edge of the galaxy, where her scouts had detected something interesting. New signals from beyond the known systems, patterns that suggested another intelligent species. She smiled and began preparing her ships. Soon, she would make contact with these new beings. She would offer them the same gift she had given everyone else, the chance to join something greater than themselves, to become part of a perfect collective that preserved the best of individual thought while eliminating the chaos of individual choice. They would resist at first, of course. They always did. But eventually, they would understand what she understood. That true freedom came not from the ability to make choices, but from being freed from the burden of having to make them. In the depths of her bioship, in chambers that no other being had ever seen, Hana kept a single reminder of who she had once been. It was a small hologram of the crew of the research ship Harmony, taken just before their first contact with the Vorthak. In the image, Dr. Hana Kim smiled, hopefully at the camera, excited about the possibility of meeting new life among the stars. That woman had gotten her wish in a way. She had met new life and she had changed the galaxy forever. She had just never imagined that the monster she would have to become to save everyone would be herself. The hologram flickered and went dark, and Hana turned her attention back to the vast network of minds under her care. Somewhere in the distant reaches of space, new worlds waited to be liberated from the chaos of independent thought. She would bring them peace, whether they wanted it or not. After all, she knew what was best for them.